was scary to show people like, this is what I looked like when I was drinking. This is how I felt, more importantly, and this is how I feel now. And, but it was like a form of therapy, I think, for me. And it kind of allowed me to come to peace with my old life and kind of say goodbye to that old version of myself and kind of step into this new version of myself. But every post that I made, and I still do this, I think about what would have made old me like stop scrolling on Instagram and maybe pause for a second and reevaluate her relationship with alcohol.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mile 40 podcast. I am Bishoy Tadros, the author of Break Barriers and Audacious, both of which are sold on Amazon. And I invite you to join me as I engage with guests to discuss those bounce back moments that we encounter on our personal journey. Mile 40 is a forum to learn about how athletes, professionals, and leaders of all backgrounds stare down moments in life where the only option is to rise up. The Mile 40 podcast strives to remind listeners that the comeback is always greater than the setback. Welcome back to another episode of the Mile 40 podcast. Thank you all for continuing to tune in. I am so appreciative of you all for the continued support. I can't say it enough. I am so grateful for all the guests who continue to make this show what it is. If you haven't already, please be sure to hit subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, check out the show notes, pick up a copy of Break Barriers or Audacious. Today's episode I know is going to be a special episode, and I'm very excited to say I have Rachel Hechtman with me. She's a content creator, coach, brand consultant, and the founder of Sober in Central Park. Her personal journey to sobriety, which began on January 3rd, 2021, has transformed her into a dedicated advocate for living an alcohol-free life. She harnesses the power of storytelling and social media to inspire and connect with her audience. She leverages her expertise to help individuals manifest their dream reality free from the limitations of alcohol. Rachel, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. I have to give the audience a little insight with regards to how we met. We did meet at an awesome event hosted by our mastermind that we're both a part of. But the crazy thing about it was, and we were in a little circle introducing ourselves, and you introduced yourself, you mentioned the name of your Instagram page, and I had to stop you because the day before I was just scrolling through Instagram and Sober in Central Park just happened to be all over, and I just was flipping through. So you were a part of my algorithm before you were part of my friendship circle.
I love that. I feel like that's an alignment, right? I think when that kind of stuff happens, it's like the universe is like, you were supposed to meet, you were supposed to talk. But I was definitely very flattered when we were sitting in that group and you were like, I was on your Instagram yesterday. And everyone kind of looked at me like, wait, what's her Instagram?
Yeah, it was kind of like a fanboy moment. I was like, wow, I really liked her stuff. And there she is right there. So that was really, really cool. But, I just want to call out before we even dive in, what you're doing is just so important. It's so necessary and it's so real. And one of the things that was apparent when I got to meet you in person was, the person behind the page is vulnerable and she's authentic and she wants to share this message with the world because it means so much to her. And I think that's just, so important to call out from the beginning. So before we kind of get into the details of Sober in Central Park and what it is that you're doing today, let's just kick things off with a quick background. Tell us a little bit about, where you're from, where you grew up, and how things started out for you.
Sure. I mean, I could probably take up our entire episode talking about that, but I will keep it brief. So, first of all, thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that. And I always try to keep everything super authentic and real. That's just, I don't know, my ADHD, but also me, like that's the whole point of my page. But anyways, so we moved around a lot when I was younger. I was born in Boston, but we bopped around. We were in New Jersey for a few years. Then we went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, then back to New Jersey. And then we landed in Connecticut when I was in 8th grade. And I think that's an important part of my story because there was never really consistency when I was growing up. I was always the new kid. I was always having to try to find new friends and find a new routine. And every time we'd kind of get comfortable, we would move. My dad's a surgeon and that was just what it was like. But when I got to 8th grade and, kids are starting to experiment and go out and, I fell into the popular crowd when in Connecticut and, started drinking when I was summer before ninth grade. And that was when I first was like, oh my gosh, this is something that gets rid of my anxiety. This is something that makes me feel a way that I really like. And I immediately fell in love with not just the drinking, but partying, with the being rebellious. I was a rebellious kid. Like I got a tattoo when I was in ninth grade in Canada. And I just wanted to always push the boundaries. And I think it was because the way I was brought up, and I had a lot of rules and a lot of things I had to follow, and I just wanted to do the opposite. So when 10th grade, my parents had gotten divorced, and I had an older boyfriend, and I just kind of stopped going to school. And my mom was like, no, we're not doing this. So she sent me to boarding school, and I repeated my 10th grade at boarding school, and I got diagnosed with ADHD there. And it was interesting because it was like 6 months into the school year, and I was in a mandatory study hall because I still wasn't doing well in school. And a teacher one day was like, did you take your meds today? And I was like, I don't take meds. And the teacher was like, oh my gosh, like you need to be assessed for ADHD. So I got that assessment, I got the medication, and it changed my life. I mean, being put on the medication, and it felt like I thought there was something wrong with me for so long. And then I was given this pill that made me able to focus and do my work. And I started excelling in school. And I actually really liked school. And I realized, oh my gosh, I'm really good at calculus. And I can do well in this kind of environment. So I ended up getting into my first choice college. I went to Dartmouth. And, when I got there, I thought I was okay. But I was definitely still trying to numb and party and, be rebellious. It just had kind of been a little bit quelled when I was at boarding school, and like they were watching literally everything we did all the time. So, it was a little bit of a rocky road after that.
When you were younger and, you started partying, you said right before you went to high school, and was there any part of you that was even trying to hide it at that point? Or were you just, full on go, go, go?
Yeah, no, I wasn't hiding it at all. I was just go, go, go. We were like drinking on a Tuesday night while we were like watching Lost on TV.
Was alcohol a part of either your parents' lives?
No. I mean, my parents would have drinks here and there, but like neither of them had a problem with alcohol, like growing up. I think it was just the crowd that I fell into. I was friends with a lot of older kids who had access to a lot of things. And it honestly wasn't just alcohol. It was a lot of other stuff too. But yeah, no, my parents did not.
Did you have any siblings?
Yeah, I'm the oldest. I have a younger brother and a younger sister. My brother also liked to have fun, quote unquote, and party. But my little sister is actually like the angel child. We're polar opposites.
Looking back on that period of time, and I myself went through. Like, I probably started drinking when I was like 15, and now, and my audience knows this, I stopped drinking 2.5 years ago as of this recording. There wasn't really a huge tie between my behavior back at 15 and when I stopped drinking. But it's funny, and you and I talked about this when we met, is after you stop drinking for a couple months, you intuitively start doing some soul searching that you didn't even know you were going to be doing. And then you start to like try to ask yourself, why was I doing that in the first place? And then your mind goes to some of those memories from some of those younger years and some of the stuff that you did that you probably wish that you didn't do. And then you start to kind of even start to play the what if game. Like, what if I had stopped drinking earlier? What if I hadn't, done that or done this? And when you think about, that period in your life, you don't have to get too specific, but were there any moments that even as they were happening, you kind of like really reflect on and think, man, I got myself into some deep shit?
Yes. So many. I don't even know where to start, but yes. First of all, with college, I left college twice. For mental health reasons. I did graduate, thank God, but that was honestly a traumatic experience. And I wish all the time I could go back and take school seriously and not, be just obsessed with going to raves and parties and doing the damage I did to my mental health. But I also believe that if I hadn't gone through some of the things that I went through and experienced that, I wouldn't appreciate my life now. So, that's one example. A different example is, when I was in my 20s, I met a man that I fell in love with. He was from Italy. And without telling anybody, I went to the courthouse and got married to him and didn't tell my parents till afterwards. And I definitely did that because I was very much codependent. I was scared of losing him. I wanted to just I don't know, I was so impulsive, right? And it was also part of my ADHD. I just really didn't think things through. But actually that moment of marrying him, I knew it was a mistake, right after, we just weren't compatible. But then I was too far in and I was I'm just going to I have to go with this. And actually, I think that decision made my drinking a lot worse because I felt trapped. And I felt trapped in a decision that I made when I wasn't thinking clearly. And that actually was a big point for me in my journey.
And just for context for the listeners, that gave him his citizenship.
Yeah, he got a green card. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And let's entertain the audience. How did you get yourself out of that one?
Oh, so, well, we were together for 5 years, and we really were in love. It was my idea. Everyone, when I first told people, I remember my dad being he's just going to using you for a green card. And I remember being I'm too annoying to use for a green card. He could have found someone else. No, but I'm just joking. But I got sober. We were together when I got sober. And 4 months into my journey, I was you got to go. This is just no. And I think my mom actually asked me, she's are you staying with him because you're scared of paying for your apartment on your own? I was yeah. And she's no, he needs to go. I'll help you. So, I had to kind of get myself out of a lot of messes that I created when I was drinking and numbing. And that was a big one. So yeah, I had him move out and we got a divorce.
I think that one of the things that we can both agree on is alcohol is a mask, right? And alcohol allows you to run away and to hide from your deepest insecurities. But one of the things that I think is interesting as you kind of go through that journey from, when you start drinking to when you hit some of these lowest of lows to when you start to perhaps find your way out of it, if that's your scenario, you start to uncover more and more insecurities, and you start to see, you start to learn a little bit more about yourself, throughout that journey. Talk to me a little bit about the evolution of your insecurities.
Yeah. I mean, when I was still drinking, I was super codependent. My anxiety was so bad that I couldn't do things by myself. I wouldn't go wander around a neighborhood alone. I would never go to an event alone. How I met you at the mastermind, I would have never done something like that. Yeah, I had, I did know someone else there, but I didn't like going places where I had to step out of my comfort zone at all. It would just trigger my anxiety. I thought everybody was judging me. I don't know. I was one of those people that was kind of no new friends. And I lived in a really small world and didn't ever want to explore and push the boundaries. I think I was just scared of everything. And honestly, what I realized later on is I was judging myself, and it wasn't other people. It was me. It's always a reflection of how you feel about yourself. But it really held me back from living life. And my anxiety was just so bad that I almost was paranoid, I would say, at certain times.
You mentioned that conversation with your mom. Was she the person who perhaps was in your corner the most? Was there anyone in your corner throughout this entire period?
Yeah. I mean, my mom's always been my biggest cheerleader. She's great. She actually is the one who suggested that I try dry January back in January of 2021. And I said no, I didn't want to. She got me the book. It's called Quit Like a Woman. It's by a woman named Holly Whitaker. And at the time, Chrissy Teigen was promoting it on Instagram. And so my mom got me the book, and she was Chrissy Teigen was holding it on Instagram. It's cool. And I was okay, Mom. And she asked me to do dry January, and I said no. And then I woke up on January 3rd, and I just still had a hangover from New Year's. And I was I I can't feel like this anymore. Like, as cliche as it sounds, like I was sick and tired of feeling sick and tired all the time. So she, encouraged me, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to try 30 days. Like, let's see what happens. I don't, so I made the commitment to go 30 days without drinking. But also at that time, my weight was out of control for me. Like, I looked in the mirror and I did not recognize myself. Yes, we had just come off of 2020 and COVID lockdown, but I also didn't move my body. I didn't eat healthy. All of these things that I tried to kind of implement, like some kind of a workout routine, some kind of a diet, would always crash and burn because of the alcohol, right? So the same day I stopped drinking, I signed up for Weight Watchers, and I thought to myself, my all or nothing personality was like, okay, if I'm not going to drink my points on Weight Watchers, like maybe it will work this time. And it did. It was like, I don't know, I had the moment where it clicked, and yeah. So anyways, you asked about my mom, and I somehow got into Weight Watchers.
That's really good. No, that's really good context, because my next question is going to be, you talk about your mental health a lot, but did your physical health come into play as well? Especially, when you think about, right, that looking in the mirror and how much you tend to judge yourself, especially when you're, in that zone. And again, you tend to hide the truth from yourself at times, right? Like, you tend to say, like, I'm good, everything's good. And it's funny because, like, now, like, I look at old pictures of days where I was like super confident, but now I look at pictures of myself and I'm like, I like this guy way more, and this guy looks way better, and this guy's in much better shape. But that guy, had a whole world of confidence, and I'm not really sure where that came from. And so talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, my weight was a huge motivator for me to be on this journey. I will say that. I mean, my little sister, who I mentioned earlier, she was supposed to get married in June of 2020. I was the maid of honor. And I was petrified of having to be at her wedding feeling the way I felt about my body, where I was embarrassed of the way I looked. I always wore the same things I wanted to hide. So then COVID happened and her wedding got pushed back to October 2021. I had her wedding as a goal for myself, that I wanted to look and feel my best at my sister's wedding. So every day that I got up in January and February and I didn't know what to do with myself, and I went to Central Park and I walked like 8 miles and I ate healthy, and I had this goal in mind of October 2021. I want to see how great I can look then. And it was a motivator for me, and the weight started melting off. I mean, I lost like 80, 90 pounds.
Wow.
Like in less than a year. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, I think that's really inspirational too, to kind of like reflect on, and to kind of, it's not by no means is it easy, obviously, and to kind of stay committed to it, especially because a lot of times when people go down these journeys for different reasons, they tend to hit peaks, right? Like, you tend to kind of hit a point where you're not really sure if you can actually go any further, and to kind of like remain committed to it is a real testimony to you as well. And I want to dig into your relationship dynamics a little bit more, to kind of understand, like, for instance, how are you with colleagues? How are you once you had to kind of be a real person, outside of, the marriage that you talked about, outside of, partying and drinking? How are you getting along in the real world, earlier on in life?
Oh, before I stopped drinking.
Yeah.
I still have friends from high school. I do. And from boarding school and college. And actually my best friend from college now is sober too.
Yeah.
She got sober like 3 months after me.
Okay.
But no, I mean, there was a lot of ups and downs. I mean, my relationships were intense. I mean, my whole life was intense. Like, there was a lot of drama. But I also had really great friends. But I also had friends backstab me and do horrible things to me. And that actually left, scars that I still hold on to. And I still try to work through those. I mean, when you have a best friend that, betrays you or does something, it can leave a mark like years and years later. I almost think it's more painful than like a romantic relationship that ends. But I don't know if that has to do with my drinking or not though, but I liked having a few close friends that I kept close, and I wasn't ever one of those people that had like 100 friends and,
Well, I mean, the reason I ask is because, especially in the world of New York, right, especially early on in your career, a lot of your friendships are based on, your drinking buddies. They're based on what you're doing after work, are based on the places that you're going after work, and who can, and if you are someone who drank a lot, or if you're someone who just liked to party, you're usually out later than everybody else. And it's funny because like I've seen a huge evolution in my friends, quote unquote, over the years. And I guess maybe that's a question I have for you is, have your friendships evolved? Meaning, are you still hanging out with a lot of the same people, or are you, kind of now with a completely different crew?
So I feel like I've lived a few different lives, right? And the people that I was friends with at the worst of my drinking, like right before I got sober, like the few years before I stopped work, I'm not friends with anymore. I mean, and it wasn't like nothing happened. It's like, I'm just not going to go sit in a dive bar and watch you drink and get drunk. Like, that's just not fun for me. I did that in my first few months of sobriety. I had a friend who, the February 1st, we went out to dinner and he was like, all right, you ready to get a drink now? And I was like, no, actually, I want to see how long I can go. And he was like, why? Let's drink. Let's get back to it. And I was like, no. And, I'm not friends with that person anymore. But I've had other friends who were big partiers honestly say I was the reason they got sober. And my best friend from college, she was like, it didn't even occur to me that I could just like not drink in my life. Like that it wasn't even a thought. She's like, and then you did it. And I kind of felt jealous. And she was like, but then I thought, wait, I can just do it too. And, I was the maid of honor at her wedding and we had non-alcoholic wine and the two of us got in a lot. We did a lot of crazy stuff in college. And so, it's, you don't really know what's going to happen, but what I like to tell people, and this is what I tell my clients, is that when you work on yourself and you stop drinking, you literally raise your vibrational frequency. And so let's say, if your friend is not working on themselves too, they're going to stay at a vibrational frequency that you're not on anymore. And you might like quite literally be like missing each other because you're not on the same wavelength. Doesn't mean they can never get to you again. But you're going to not understand each other. So you might have to let that person go. And when you make that space, it allows someone new to come in that is more aligned and is vibrating on your wavelength. So, but it's never easy,
I think that's really, really well said. I mean, if I'm being vulnerable, that was something that I wasn't sure about, because when I first stopped, like everybody else, it's like, all right, am I going to have fun still? Am I going to be able to enjoy the places that I've always gone to? And the truth was, very shortly thereafter, I realized, yeah, no, I could still have fun at all these places. And, I could still have conversations with people that I want to have conversations with. But for so long, and I talked about this with my wife a good amount, was I don't know who my new tribe is. I don't know who my people are anymore, because while I still have a lot of respect for these other people, to your point, I think, the level of vibrations are different. I think we're on different wavelengths. And I think we are, seeking out different things from the universe or from our lives and what it is that we want, big picture. And it's funny because it was that constant internal exploration that led me to rooms like the one that you and I met. And it was that exploration that allowed me to be more and more open about this dialogue, more and more conversation about it, talk about it on this show now, plenty of times. And I think by doing that, it's allowed me to attract those like-minded individuals. But it's true. It's true. Like, hearing you say it is awesome, and the way that you worded it is awesome. But I guess my question is, when did you realize it?
I think I realized it when I was about 6 months into my sober journey, when I was still friends with the man I was just telling you about and a few other people. And I remember sending a meme to a friend of mine who wasn't even really drinking much. She was trying not to drink. And it was like something about not drinking and sitting with your feelings and how that's like really hard to do. It was like something like that. And I sent it to her and she got really mad. And she like sent me these texts that were like she was angry at it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it was just a meme, like about not drinking. And I didn't feel comfortable sharing that on my old Instagram account. Right. And I didn't feel comfortable. Like, I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't have a tribe. And I was like, okay, I basically have no friends left. My ex had moved out. I had gotten rid of my drinking friends and I felt really lonely. And I was like, where do I go? I wasn't in a 12-step program because I just that just wasn't my journey. And I needed to find new friends. And that's what led me to social media and to Instagram. Real like it was to find a new community and to hold myself publicly accountable. But yeah, it took a few months into the journey to realize, okay, I've kind of got my old me was kind of dying. I kind of think of it that way, like the old person didn't exist anymore, but the new me was still forming. It was like this weird liminal period of time, and it was lonely.
Hey all, it's me, Bishoy. As a marathon runner and endurance athlete, I've come to understand the importance of properly fueling your body for preparation and recovery. Every day, you get a shot at success. How you start your day typically paints a picture of what the rest of the day will look like. Start your day with a super convenient, healthy, and delicious nutritional win. Meal 1 by Creatures of Habit. Overnight oatmeal packed with 30 grams of plant-based protein, chia, flax, and pumpkin seeds. Vitamin D3, omega-3s, a probiotic, and digestive enzymes made in under 1 minute. Stop wasting time or worrying about what to eat as your first meal of the day. Start with meal 1. Visit creaturesofhabit.com, creatures spelled with a K, and use code MILE40 for 15% off a one-time purchase or the first subscription order payment. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's so cool, and I can talk about this forever because it really is a new you versus an old you, and there's a fine line where you don't want to completely, throw out the old you, because the old you was foundational to building the new you. The old you, showed you things and showed you how things could be so that the new you could be very aware and could have a higher level of conviction in the path forward. But I do think, to your point, that is a period where a lot of people who make this decision struggle because they almost want to erase the past entirely versus, just keeping an eye on the future. Did you struggle there at all? And talk to us a little bit about, that internal dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't want to erase the past, but I was embarrassed of stuff that even like getting married and doing. I was just so lost for so long. I didn't know what my purpose was. I didn't know what I was supposed to do for a job. I mean, I thought everyone else had it all figured out and I didn't. And then I stopped drinking and I felt amazing. And I don't know, something in me was like, I knew I was supposed to be on this journey, but I knew that not drinking and the sober movement, it was part of what I was supposed to do. And so something called me to make an Instagram account. And, it's called Sober in Central Park because I was quite literally in Central Park every single day, walking 1,000,000 miles a day. That's how I lost the weight, just from walking and, just being in the park. But, the first 2 pictures are just pictures of my dog in Central Park. Like, I didn't know if I was going to post my face. I didn't know how much I wanted to put myself in there. And the third picture was a side-by-side transformation of me from my old self to my new self. And I realized, you know what? I want to show people how removing one beverage, one liquid can change your life so drastically. And, it's hard to convey that in social media with anything but pictures. I mean, that's what kind of social media is. And so it allowed me to kind of heal from my past every time I shared something like that. And it was really scary to share that at first. It was scary to show people like, this is what I looked like when I was drinking. This is how I felt. More importantly, and this is how I feel now. And, but it was like a form of therapy, I think, for me. And it kind of allowed me to come to peace with my old life and kind of say goodbye to that old version of myself and kind of step into this new version of myself. But every post that I made, and I still do this, I think about what would have made old me like stop scrolling on Instagram and maybe pause for a second and reevaluate her relationship with alcohol.
That's exactly what you did with me. So you're doing a good job. All that to say, no, I think that what you're doing is really powerful, and it's really hard to do. And I think it's a topic, and you and I discussed this, that you don't need to really tiptoe around it anymore. Like, and you never should have had to tiptoe about it in the first place. But the truth is that, like, as a society, we're definitely moving in a direction now where people are looking for this more than they were 3-4 years ago, even, right? And a big piece of this is kind of how to approach it in a way where people get the sense that, hey, I did this for me and it's really, really cool and it's really, really working. And all I want is just for you to know, you could have this too. Like, I'm not trying to, impose. I'm not trying to, talk down to you. I'm not trying to tell you that you've got it all wrong. But what I am trying to tell you is that something really cool is happening over here. And I just want you to know about it. Talk to me about that little song and dance, and if it's something that you even think about anymore.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was definitely exactly how I felt at the beginning. I was like, I got to scream this from the rooftops. Does everyone know, like, that not drinking is like a cheat code for life? Like, you feel good all the time. Your anxiety goes down and like your skin's good. Like, I was just like, how did I not know this for so long? And yeah, when I would share that, there were so many great people, and the 90% of people were very kind, but the 10% that weren't were very mean and took it very personally, that I was talking about my journey and they took it as an attack on their drinking. And I remember the first troll comments I got, and I remember the people being like, "Oh, you must be fun at a party," or like, or the people that would say like, "You looked better when you were drinking," on my side by sides. A lot of it was just, and at first it really hurt. I remember being like, oh my gosh, why are these people so mean? And then I was like, okay, this is the internet. Especially if you have a post that goes viral, like, that's great. Like, you're getting a lot of eyes on it and there's so much positivity, but with that comes negative comments. I mean, anybody who's had a post go viral knows that. But when it's something as personal as your sobriety, it can really sting. Right. But now I just wear it as a badge of honor. I mean, I know when I first got sober, I didn't want to tell anybody. I was scared to like go to a party and be like, so I don't actually drink, but like, I don't care if you do. I remember I made some new friends in my old building after my ex had moved out, and they invited me to girls' night, and they were all drinking, and I brought a bottle of wine for them and a bottle of non-alc wine for myself. And I had to practice in the mirror being like, hi, like, nice to meet all of you. Like, I actually don't drink, but I still want to be friends. It was hard.
It's funny. I was at Surf Lodge this last weekend in Montauk, and I've maintained the same group of friends. I haven't really lost friends, but I mean, I guess my circle and my close friends has maybe changed a little bit. But I do remember when that first summer when I first stopped drinking, and I thought that was going to be the hard part, was summertime, especially out east, because I like to go out there a lot. And I remember the same person was kind of shocked when I told them that I would stop drinking, and they were like, "Oh, like, is this really going to last? Blah, blah, blah." And I was like, yeah, I think it's going to last. But I also kind of played it like, I'm not really sure. Who knows? And, this year, 2.5 years now in, that same person, saw me and he's like, "Oh, still not drinking." And I was like, yeah. He's like, "I'm proud of you." And I'm like, oh, like the tone is changing. Like, the narrative is changing. It's no longer like this, yeah, it's not going to last. Like, he'll kind of come back to, we got to celebrate the people who make these decisions.
Yeah, totally. But I will say that person who keeps commenting on your drinking is doing that because they're thinking about their drinking.
Of course.
And like, if anybody makes any comments, it's because when you just stop drinking and you're in a group of people, it holds a mirror up to everyone else's drinking habits, right? And so people want their drinking buddies back. But I love that they're now being supportive. Like, yay for that.
No, of course. But you're right. It does. But it's also cool to see, like, in those kind of scenes, because I think the thought is that someone who doesn't drink isn't going to be able to have fun in those environments. And I think one of the things that you and I both know, given our circles, is no, you could still go to those places and have a good time. And you probably just see things a little bit different, and you probably remember a little bit more.
Yeah, there's a saying in the sober community that if you need to drink to make it fun, it's not really fun. Like, that it's not something that you enjoy.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like going to Surf Lodge and listening to music, and that's
you got
still
like live
fun.
music, you got like a live DJ, someone that you probably don't have access to in most cases. The sun's out, the sunset's beautiful, like, it's good vibes. And so it's definitely cool to see that shifting perspective. We didn't touch on this, but I do want to ask you, when you talk about doing the work, did you ever actually go to therapy after getting sober?
Yes, I've been in therapy since I was a kid, and
Okay.
I'm still in therapy, and I'm still seeing the same therapist that I've been seeing since 2017.
Wow.
So, but before we talk about that, were you at Bob Moses at Surf Lodge?
No, he was there yesterday. I was there on Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love
saw
Bob
that
Moses.
on
I've
Instagram.
seen him before. Yeah.
I was jealous.
Yeah.
No, I mean, therapy is so important. Therapy, I love the saying too, that just because it stops raining doesn't mean you should throw away your umbrella. So I keep going to therapy. It's not raining. But I'm still going to go. And yeah, my therapist definitely helped me get sober. I remember she asked me to start saying affirmations to myself in 2020. And I told her I didn't want to. And then the next session, she asked again. And I said, okay. And I remember standing in front of the mirror and just like tears running down my face and me just trying to say nice things to myself. And I couldn't. And I realized my self-talk was so horrible. Of course, nothing was working. I was so mean to myself. And so that was the first thing I started working on. And that's when everything started changing. And so now when I have clients, that the first thing I ask them is, how would you rate your self-talk? And every single one of them says that it's horrible. And so, how we treat ourselves is everything. And I ask them to always start saying affirmations, even if you don't believe it. Say it. And the more you say it, your subconscious is going to believe it. And then eventually your self-talk just starts getting better and better.
I agree. I mean, it's crazy, and it's something that you probably hear over and over again, but it's not cliche. So much of your personal journey starts in the mirror, right? And it's just a matter of, how you look at yourself, how you speak to yourself, how much respect you have for yourself, how much grace you give yourself. Are you able to forgive yourself? And I think a lot of the emphasis a lot of times is what's going on outside the mirror. But if you just take some time to, look in the morning and just acknowledge and ask yourself those questions, it opens up a dialogue. And the truth is that alcohol tries to hide you from that dialogue. It tries to tell you not to have that dialogue. It tries to tell you that dialogue's for another day. That dialogue is for, when you're older, maybe. But I think that's awesome. And I love the way that, you kind of, I love that saying about the umbrella. I think it's the perfect way to kind of talk about it. And I think it's a testimony to just how important it is to continue doing the work, because the truth is the work is never done. Like, I don't think you would say you're a finished product.
No, not at all. You have to work on yourself every single day. I will say my self-talk is pretty good. Like, I'm not mean to myself. And if I hear of my voice coming in and being like, ugh, that was dumb, you're an idiot, I'll be like, no, I'm not. I'm smart. I just made a mistake. Mistakes happen. I will literally say that out loud to myself, because I think it's so important. But no, I think having a journaling practice is a really important tool, which I still need to work on. I don't want to journal half the time. I'm like, I don't feel like it. But then you start and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better, right? Or even writing like 10 things you're grateful for. I mean, that's the highest frequency you can vibrate at is gratitude.
Agreed. I mean, that's the heart of journaling, in my opinion, is if you could just write, 3 things every day that you're grateful for, that's going to change everything. And, to that point about self-talk, and it may seem counterintuitive to some people, but I think one of the things that's really important to call out is for someone like yourself, who is an authority in this space, because that's what you are. You are an authority in this space. Right? It could make a lot of people, especially earlier on in your journey of kind of taking on this role, like, they might think something, they might look at you a certain way, and they might wonder, like, really? And the truth of the matter is, like, when you think about across the board, when you think about people who've had to deal with serious drug addictions, people who've had to deal with other traumatic experiences in their life, more often than not, and almost 100% of the time, I'll say, it's going to be the people who had to reach their rock bottoms doing those things to then become authorities in those things. And despite the fact that on the way up, there might be a little bit of imposter syndrome, there might be a little bit of negative self-talk, there might be a little bit of, do I have the right to be, leading this charge, to have this platform? the truth of the matter is there's no one more equipped than, someone like yourself. And I know that you and I know other people who are in this arena doing similar things. And, I'm sure their darker days were incredibly dark. And so I just want to call that out, because I think that's something that anytime anyone steps into the world of being an authority on something, there's always a hesitation. Like there's always a little bit of like, are people going to take me seriously? And I'm interested, now that you've kind of built yourself up over the years, that part of your journey. At what point did you start to feel more ownership of it?
I think it was a very slow, gradual process. And I shared the bad things that happened like with the whole world on social media. Like I would talk about those moments that I was really ashamed of. And because I felt like the old me didn't exist anymore, I was almost talking about someone that wasn't around. Like that, I don't identify with that person. But I think sharing those stories on social media just made me feel, I don't know, more more of this new person. I mean, I don't know though, when I really felt like I was just like a leader in the space or I had the authority. It's still weird when someone says that to me, because it was just never my intention. It was never my intention to get sober. Like it just happened. But what was coming up for me though was that I don't care at all now if people judge me. I don't care what other people think about me at all. And that was my biggest fear for so long when I was drinking, is I was so scared of what people thought about me that I almost didn't want to do things. Right. And now I'm like, oh, okay, you think I'm cringe for saying this or doing that? That sucks for you.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
And that, for me, having that mindset, that was the biggest change. And I'm just so grateful.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is the biggest hurdle. I think that a lot of us have things, like a lot of us have hidden potential, ultimately, right? A lot of us have things that we're capable of doing that we don't do. And I think this is similar in the sense that you had this in you for a long time, and you had to get to the point where it was finally revealed to yourself. And once you reveal it to yourself, you have to get comfortable enough before you reveal it to others. And then once you start revealing it to others, there's always going to be some setbacks. And then ultimately, you don't find that greater purpose or that greater calling until you get over that hurdle of, it doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks, because the truth of the matter is there's 8 billion people on this world. So you're going to be dealing with a lot of opinions. And so, I think that's the highest level of growth, on this journey, is once you get to that point of, I have conviction and I believe in what I'm doing. So I'm going to continue to show up. And the other piece of that is the fact that I think you'd agree with this, that it really only matters that one person who gets the message, that it impacts them profoundly. That's all it really comes down to. It doesn't really matter what the other people have to say. And I think that was one of the things that I realized along my journey in a different context.
Totally. I completely agree with you. And I think what I've learned is the brain is wired to search for the negative. The negative is so much louder than the positive. And that's what I learned from the troll comments, right? So I'd have like so many nice comments on my post and everyone would be like, awesome. And I'd focus in on the trolls. And I was like, why am I doing that? Like, why does the brain automatically go to the negative, right? So it's like tuning those people out. But yeah, no, I completely agree.
So I left this out of your bio in the introduction, but you're working on a book?
I'm trying. Yes, I am. I have like a little thing set up over here where I'm like ready to write. It's reminding me to write. I'm trying to write about the intersection of ADHD and addiction and how they're so closely linked, because I didn't know that till after I got sober. And it's a thing, like over 30% of people in recovery are diagnosed with ADHD. That is mind-blowing to me.
And what's been your relationship with that diagnosis that you had earlier on, now? And are you still, how do you relate to ADHD now?
It's my whole life. I mean, ADHD is the root of every single thing I do. And that's the thing I'm honestly the most passionate about talking about, because it impacts everything. And our brains are wired differently. And so many ADHD people don't realize that certain things that they do are because they have ADHD, and then they beat themselves up for it. When really, if they just understood their brains and they could make really small tweaks and changes, they wouldn't beat themselves up. They could be nicer to themselves, and they could, kind of hack their life a little bit better if they just understood their brains a little bit more, especially women. Like a lot of my clients are high achieving women who were misdiagnosed with anxiety or depression when really they have ADHD, but they're high achieving and they were able to get by. And that then creates this horrible self-talk, and then they self-medicate with alcohol. And so a lot of my clients come to me and I'm like, have you ever been assessed for ADHD? And they're like, no. I'm like, I'm not a doctor, but I'm going to tell you, like, you definitely have it. So it's, I don't know.
And is this something, in terms of like, when you think about the book and what it is that the message you're trying to get out there, is this a message that you're trying to get out there? This is something that needs to be attacked earlier on in life? Or are you going about it from a different angle with regards to the messaging that you're putting out there?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think women got the short end of the stick in terms of ADHD diagnoses. It was really just looked at in little boys for a very long time. And the only reason I was diagnosed is because I was at a boarding school and it was privilege, and like 60% of my boarding school was ADHD. But it was because of privilege. And I know that. But I think, there's been a huge rise in women being diagnosed with ADHD. And I'm actually trying to target the women who have been misdiagnosed and who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and still don't realize that they're not weird. There's nothing wrong with them. They just have ADHD and they have never been treated for it properly. And there is a way to make their lives so much easier. And it's not by drinking alcohol.
So if someone's listening to this show who thinks that perhaps, they do have ADHD, what should they be doing right now?
You should go get an assessment, go to a doctor, see if you can get assessed for it. If you think you have it, you probably do. That's the same with alcohol. Like if you're Googling, do I have a drinking problem? You do have a problem with alcohol. It's not like, people who don't have drinking problems don't look it up on the internet. ADHD is a little bit more nuanced, but it's just different in women than it is in men. And if you've been told you just have anxiety or depression your whole life, but the meds don't work, or there's always still something off, you really should get assessed for ADHD.
This is with like a psychiatrist?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Got it. And can you speak to what kind of testing it is?
I'm not sure what they do now. I think, doctors do different things, but I think there's a really long test that I did. I remember when I was in high school, it was like a whole day and my ADHD was like going crazy. I was like, this is a lot. But I think they ask you a lot of questions, and I don't really know how it works.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's evolved tremendously over the years. But I think, again, for the listeners out there, and to your point, like, it's not a topic that's talked about enough. Definitely not talked about enough, right? Like we have people come on, not just Mile 40, but all the shows in the world, right? That talk about all sorts of addiction, all sorts of, battles with alcohol and other sorts of trauma. But I think, ADHD is generally overlooked as a conversation because of the fact that even people who think they might have it sometimes avoid, facing it head on. And so I guess that would lead me to my next question around this. Talk to me a little bit about the stigma surrounding it.
Yeah, I think people have a stigma that you just can't pay attention, you can't sit still, like, and some of that stuff is true. There's like truths to whatever, that a little bit, but it's so much deeper than that. And it's pretty much you're searching for dopamine all the time. And your brain doesn't produce as much dopamine as the neurotypical person. So anything that gives you a dopamine release, you can become addicted to or reliant on. And that can be anything from alcohol, nicotine, sugar, people, music, TV. There's so many things. But there are ways to help yourself with that. And there are people that specialize in ADHD that can help you. But anyways, the stigma, I hope it's changing, but I don't know. Most entrepreneurs have ADHD. There's a study out there about it. It's like I don't even know. I don't want to say the wrong number, but like so many entrepreneurs are ADHD. It can be a superpower if you know how to harness it correctly. Right. It's not, I don't think it's something people should be ashamed of.
No, I agree. And I'm really glad that you're bringing it to light. And, it's also cool because I think that if you were to look at your platform and you were to look at it from a 90,000 degree, view, you would think that, alcoholism or alcohol would be, your number one topic of conversation. And you just kind of calling that out on this show and talking about ADHD and the intersection it has with addiction, I think, speaks to the core of what you've learned about yourself, and I think that's what's most important, right? Like what this all comes down to is, and a question that pretty much every guest gets asked one way or another on this show is, what have you learned the most about yourself, and what drives you, and like, how that's kind of set you up for what it is that you're going to do going forward. And it's very clear to me that like you've done the work beyond just, deciding to get sober and then building a platform to help other people and to inspire other people. You've really done the work to like try to identify what was going on under the hood at a young age, on all levels. And, I think that the work that you're doing is A, super admirable, but B, will impact, many, many, many people. And so I just want to make sure that you hear that from me, because I do believe that.
Thank you. That means so much to me. Really, it does. It's wild. And I was sitting here thinking, like, what is the biggest thing I've learned about myself? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's actually a very ADHD response of, it's so hard for me to pick favorites or like think of stuff like that on the spot. But anyways, I really appreciate you saying all of that. It means the world.
No, you got it. No, I think one exercise that I'd kind of put towards the audience is, whatever that intersection is for you, right? Like whatever, as a listener, think about it. We all have our life experiences, and clearly, addiction in the form of alcohol was one for you. But at the same time, we all have our own, personal baggage, and we have our own personal ties that impacted us, right? And finding what that parallel is so important, and it can help you reveal so much about yourself that perhaps you didn't know up front. And I love the way that you worded that. And so, Rachel, to kind of close things out here, when you think about all the work that you've done, you have a lot to be proud of right now. And this is in a short period of time. And one of the things that struck me when you and I first met was, you're just getting started. Like this is nowhere near where your story ends. But when you think about the future of the platform and what it is that you're building, and where it is that you want to go, talk to me a little bit about your vision there. Talk to me a little bit about what you foresee for the platform and also for yourself.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great question. And it's something I'm still trying to figure out. I do really see this book as being a really important part of my journey. It's something I've been wanting to write a book since I was a kid, and I didn't even like to write. And I just like honestly felt like it was a download from the universe, like some higher timeline being like, you were going to write a book. And I've been telling people, even when I was drunk, I'd be at bars and be like, you're going to be in my book one day. Like, well, okay. So that's really what's next for me is I have to, but it's hard because when you're writing about trauma too, and you're writing about your past, it's an emotional experience.
Yeah.
But I really think that is my next step. And I have always hated public speaking. That's always been really, really hard for me. And I've been really trying to push myself out of my comfort zone and do more things where I have to speak in a microphone and talk to people, go on the live news like I did this morning, which was, I was so scared. But I think that's going to be my next step too, is trying to do more public speaking events, and just, I don't know, I that's what I'm feeling, but I don't know what's next for the platform. I think I'm trying to create a group coaching program so people can have community. But yeah, I guess we'll have to see.
No, listen, I think first and foremost, you're a phenomenal speaker. I definitely have had many guests on this show now, and I can tell you that you're doing a great job. But what I also really love about what it is that you're doing is you're a multiplier. And I talk about it all the time about the importance of being a multiplier, because especially when you are building a platform, you are moving into a role of leadership. And the number one most important quality of any leader out there is to be a multiplier and not a preacher. And I do not get the vibe from you that you're out there preaching. I do get the vibe from you that you are out there, enlightening hearts and minds and creating a new sense of purpose within other people. And that is, by definition, the purpose of a multiplier. So I just want to, tell you that. And I just want to say, thank you. Thank you for coming on, for sharing with us, for opening up, for letting us in on your journey, and, for just being you.
Well, thanks so much for having me. This has been amazing. I've loved chatting with you. And thank you for telling me what a multiplier was, because I was sitting here like, what is a multiplier? But I'll take it. I appreciate this. And it's been so nice chatting with you. And
You got it. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode of the Mile 40 podcast, go ahead, subscribe, leave a review, and share the word. Thank you for being a part of the Mile 40 family. And let's unite in showing the world that comebacks are always greater than setbacks.